What is the difference between rich kids and poor kids when it comes to a college education? Now, you might think that wealthier kids can afford a better college education, but what about the type of majors they decide to study? Well, there have been numerous researchers who have looked into this issue, and they found that the wealthier your parents are, the more likely you are to major in certain topics that aren't necessarily lucrative for your future. I'll give you an example. So, apparently, if you are a child of wealthy parents, you are much less likely to be an engineer or a mathematician. You're more likely to go into the arts. You're more likely to study history or English or art history. I'll give you an example. Kids from lower income families tend toward useful majors such as computer science, math, and physics. Those whose parents make more money flock to history, English, and performing arts. In fact, one researcher, a sociologist by the name of Weeden, says the following: "It's consistent with the claim that kids from higher earning families can afford to choose less vocational or instrumental majors because they have more of a buffer against the risk of or underemployment." I love that she touched on underemployment because that is a real problem that young people are dealing with today. I don't think that gets enough attention.
Completely.
But I think this makes all the sense in the world. You have that financial cushion, which allows you to delve into a topic or a major that you're actually passionate about, as opposed to something that you would do because it's more lucrative.
I agree. I half agree with this because part of me, with, like you said, if your family has the money, you're going to go into something that is important to you, that you enjoy doing. You're going to have that leeway because, you know, at the end of the day, you can go back home to mommy and daddy's house and you're going to have that cushion for you. But I didn't like how they described people from lower income families, that they're all going to these higher, and I know they're not generalizing fully, but it kind of just was a little bit of a thorn for me because it's sort of oversimplifying what people in low-income families have to actually deal with.
Yes.
And a lot of people who have come from low-income families don't actually have access to become these engineers, these doctors, all the lists that they said, because of the access, because of all these other issues. And so when I read that, it sort of seemed like, oh, your parents are poor, you're going to become a doctor, when we all know if your parents are poor, the likelihood of you being poor is greater.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I love that you touched on that because it does simplify it and make it seem as though, all right, we're all in an equal playing field.
Exactly.
And so if you're poor and you want to be a doctor, all you got to do is go to med school. It's not a big deal.
Exactly.
I mean, look, you might be more inclined to study law or medicine or something that's more lucrative, but it's almost impossible to overcome those obstacles considering
Completely.
student loan debt and all the things that people are dealing with right now.
And that struck me in this, that they didn't bring that up. If they just wanted to stick on the fact that people from higher income families have the ability or the option to go into these different majors where they can be creative, be in the arts, leave it there. But let's not pull in people who are from low-income families without addressing all the issues and painting the full picture.
Yeah, that's a great point. This story struck a nerve with me because it's something that I definitely experienced growing up.
Yeah.
So my parents were immigrants from Armenia. They had nothing. I grew up, I wouldn't say I grew up poor, but it was definitely a working class situation. It wasn't until I was almost a senior in high school that my parents were finally financially stable. And so growing up, I realized that there was a huge difference between our socioeconomic status and the socioeconomic statuses of other people that I even went to school with.
Yeah.
And so there was always this obsession with being successful. And a lot of it was pushed on me by my parents, thankfully. And so there was never really a discussion about, oh, I want to be an actress. Well, actually, there was a discussion. I remember there was a point in my life where I wanted to be an actress, and my mom's like, yeah, no. You're not going to be an actress. Here's a list of career options for you. You choose one.
And you're going to go on that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the first thing that was on that list was journalist because my mom wanted to be a journalist. And I was like, that seems kind of cool. I'll do that.
Yeah.
And I ended up being really passionate about it. So thankfully it worked out. But yeah, my family couldn't afford to have me dilly-dally and fuck around when I was in college. When I was in college, it was like, that's it.
Same.
Buckle down and get the hell out of there. This is too expensive.
But I think we've talked about this a little bit before. I think a lot of that is because we're from immigrant parents.
Yes.
And so we're both first-generation American.
Yes.
And so the same thing with me. There was no option to, this was something that later on in life, after I was established, it was like, now, if you want to pursue a dream,
Yes.
you can, and go after it. But early on, there was no way between the ages of 15 and 25 I would have ever felt comfortable saying to my parents, hey, I want to be in front of the camera. I want to like be a TV host and be a model. They'd have been like, get out of here.
Yeah.
It would never been accepted. And I think what you hit on is really important, because when we talk about these people in low-income families, not only do they not have access, but then you're dealing with parents who don't know how to support their children.
Yes.
They don't have the skills to say to their child, you need to have this drive. These are the options. You know what I mean? A lot of low-income families that I've worked with, you know, they only believe that you can be a basketball player, you can, or I mean an athlete, or you can, you know, get one of these government jobs. They don't have the knowledge to say to their kids, and not always, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of times to say, this is what you can do. You know, my parents gave me a similar list and said, you should try one of these careers. And I went into one of them. Same with you.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of friends whose parents, who we grew up in, you know, around richer kids, but we were the more, you know, we weren't poor, but we were just making it.
Yes.
That their parents didn't do that, and now I go visit them, and they are the manager of a Walmart, which is fine for them.
I know, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's fine for them, and you know, if they're happy, I'm not knocking that career, but it's one of those things where their parents didn't say to them, hey, you know, you can actually be more than this.
So that actually has an impact on their parents. I have a statistic showing that. So doctors and surgeons tended to come from families with lower incomes than musicians and artists. When compared to their parents, doctors on average improved on their parents' income by 40%. Artists, though, trailed their parents' earnings by 35%.
Wow.
So it does have an impact on these, you know, children's futures. But it kind of sucks that we live in an age where student loan debt is so high and so much of a burden that people can't go to school for enlightenment or for their passions. You do it as a business move. You do it as an investment.
Completely.
And it's unfortunate because I want people to have the ability to practice something that they are passionate about and not worry about something being lucrative enough for them. Another final point that I want to bring up about this is one of the reasons why children from wealthier parents are likely to enter the arts is because they've gone to schools where those teachings were available to them.
Exactly.
Right?
Back to the access, you know?
So if you're going to a regular public school that's being defunded, the reality is you're not going to have access to music classes or art classes. If you're going to a wealthy private school, well, those options are available to you. So you're more likely to follow that passion.